single soul, not even a trace of Rome will survive the hour! Everything is burning to hell!
There's no escape! The gates are blocked! We are trapped! This is absolute slaughter! We are going to burn alive!
While thousands of innocent men, women and children were literally baking alive in a 9-day human furnace. Right there, standing on the highest floor of his towering palace, Emperor Nero was watching the apocalypse unfold, casually playing his flute.
Listen to the fire. Rome is turning to ash. And this symphony of destruction is the most beautiful thing I have ever created.
It wasn't an act of God. He ordered it. He burned his own people alive. But what kind of sick, demonic madness drives an emperor to slaughter his own empire? Tonight, we drag the darkest secret of the ancient world out of the ashes. Let's begin.
But before we go back to that night, there's one detail almost everyone misses, and it might change how you see Nero completely. Hold on to it.
The date? July 18th, in the year 64 AD. Rome, the single greatest city on the face of the earth. Over 1 million souls packed into narrow, wooden, tinder-dry streets. And in a row of merchant shops beside the Circus Maximus, stacked floor to ceiling with oil, wool, and kindling. A single spark became an inferno the world had never seen.
It started at the oil stores! The whole street it exploded! Water! Get water! Now! Now!
There was no fire brigade equal to this. No stone to stop it. Just wood, wind, and 6 days of unrelenting hell. Then, just as it seemed to finally die out, it reignited without warning and burned for 3 more days. After that, 9 days, total. Of Rome's 14 districts, 3 were wiped completely off the map. 7 more left in smoking ruin. Only 4 survived untouched. Ancient shrines older than Rome itself, some dating back to the city's mythical founding, vanished in a single night. And somewhere in that chaos, a story was born. A story that has haunted the name Nero for nearly 2,000 years. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand the boy who became emperor. But here's what the textbooks never tell you. This madman was adored by Rome's poor and feared by its rich. So why would an emperor, his people loved, burn his own city to the ground? Nero Claudius Caesar, adopted heir of Emperor Claudius, crowned at just 16 years old in the year 54 AD, after his own mother allegedly poisoned his stepfather to clear his son's path to the throne.
By the time of the fire, Nero was 26. He had already ordered the execution of that same mother.
Divorced, then executed his first wife. He obsessed over music, poetry, and public performance, far more than the daily grind of ruling an empire. A fixation that made him beloved by the common people and deeply distrusted by Rome's aristocracy.
He speaks of art before he speaks of Rome. That should frighten you more than any fire ever could.
Picture the city that fire found. Streets barely wide enough for 2 men to pass shoulder to shoulder. 6- and 7-story wooden apartment blocks called insulae, leaning into each other overhead, blocking out the sky entirely. When flame found this maze, packed with dry summer wind, it didn't just spread, it exploded outward in every direction at once.
My children were in that building! Someone, please! Has anyone seen my children?
For 6 days, Rome burned without mercy. Entire families died in homes with nowhere left to run. And when officials finally believed the worst had passed, flames tore through the city a second time, as if summoned back from the ashes themselves.
The historian Tacitus, one of the only surviving sources with any real proximity to the event, recorded the devastation in chilling detail.
Temples standing for centuries, reduced to ash in hours. Priceless relics of Rome's earliest kings, lost forever in a single burning night. This is the image burned into history. An emperor, watching his city die, simply performing. But the image burned into your mind. Nero playing his flute while Rome died is about to crack. Because the one historian closest to the event says something almost entirely different. Because the most detailed ancient account of Nero's actual reaction says something almost entirely different. Tacitus, writing decades closer to the event than any other surviving historian, records that Nero wasn't even in the city when the fire broke out. He was 35 miles away, at his private villa in Antium, and rushed back to Rome, only after the flames had already taken hold of half the city.
Caesar! Rome is burning! The fire has taken the circus, and it's spreading faster than anything we can contain.
According to this same account, Nero didn't celebrate what he found. He opened the Campus Martius, his own private gardens, to shelter the newly homeless. He ordered emergency grain shipments in from the port of Ostia to feed starving refugees.
He personally funded the earliest reconstruction efforts out of his own treasury.
So where, exactly, did the flute come from? That detail belongs to a different historian entirely, Suetonius, writing nearly 50 years after Nero's death, who claimed, "The emperor climbed a tower dressed in full stage costume and sang of the ancient fall of Troy, while his own city burned below him." A striking, unforgettable image, written by a man who never witnessed it himself, in an era when trashing Nero's memory wasn't just safe, it was politically expected. And yet, suspicion never fully died, because in the ashes of the fire's worst-hit districts, Nero built something extraordinary, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. A palace complex so vast it swallowed over 100 acres of prime Roman real estate, complete with an artificial lake, gilded ceilings, and a colossal bronze statue of the emperor himself, standing over 100 feet tall. That land, before the fire, had belonged to some of Rome's wealthiest families. Families who, by every account, would never willingly have sold at any price. Convenient timing? Or simply an opportunistic ruler seizing a rebuilding opportunity the fire itself had already created? To this day, historians remain genuinely divided. Stay with me, because from here, the story gets darker. The part they didn't put in the history books is where the truth really hides. What isn't disputed is what happened next. As public fury demanded someone pay for the catastrophe, Nero found his scapegoat. A small, deeply unpopular religious sect, barely known outside Rome's poorest quarters, Christians. Tacitus records the punishment in horrifying detail. Christians sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs in the public arena, others crucified along Rome's roadways, some coated in tar and pitch, set ablaze as living human torches to light Nero's private gardens after dark. I have no love for these Christians, but even I could not stand to watch what happened in that garden. Even a Roman public, well accustomed to brutal public executions, found this excessive. It stands today as the first large-scale, state-sanctioned persecution of Christians in recorded history. And by most modern accounts, it began not as religious hatred, but as a desperate act of political damage control.
So who really started the fire that reshaped an empire?
Before I give you the answer, ask yourself this. What if the evidence points to something far less dramatic than arson and far more disturbing? Modern historians point to something far less cinematic than arson or madness: Rome's own architecture. Fires broke out constantly in that crowded wooden city. This may simply have been the one that caught catastrophically out of control in dry summer wind, with no way to stop it once it began. There's a deeper problem too, with the mad emperor version of events.
Nearly every detailed account of Nero's cruelty comes from historians writing under the dynasties that replaced him.
Men with every political incentive to paint the fallen regime as monstrously as possible, to justify the ones who came after. That doesn't mean Nero was innocent. It means the full truth may be permanently unrecoverable, buried under 2,000 years of legend, propaganda, and one unforgettable image of an emperor holding a flute. 4 years after the fire, in the year 68 AD, Nero's own empire finally turned against him. Facing rebellion, betrayal, and a Senate that had declared him a public enemy, the emperor who once claimed to have created the most beautiful symphony of destruction ever heard, took his own life in a borrowed villa outside the city, with almost no one left beside him. His final words, recorded by that same hostile historian Suetonius, have echoed for 2,000 years. What an artist dies in me. So what really happened on the night Rome burned? Was it an accident, seized upon by a paranoid, image-obsessed ruler to build his dream palace on cleared land? Was it a genuine tragedy, met with real relief and real rebuilding, later buried under decades of hostile propaganda? Or was Nero exactly what history remembers him as? A man who watched his empire die and heard only music?
2,000 years later, the fire is long extinguished. The truth may never be.
Somewhere, in the silence between the historical record and the legend, that same eerie melody still seems to play.
So, was Nero an artist, a monster, or the ultimate scapegoat? History may never agree, but tell me your verdict.
If you think he ordered the fire, if you think the Christians were framed, and subscribe, because the truth about Rome's other mad emperors is even darker.